Hello, everyone. My name is Spencer Walsh, and on today's show, we are talking about a very busy week in British politics. Penny Mordaunt. She's built up a 26-pound, and I have to, 26,000-pound war chest since Rishi Sunak has become Prime Minister. What is her position? What is Rishi Sunak's position? And why also is Barack Obama in Downing Street? He was there yesterday. That was a little bit weird. We'll break that down. Also, the government has just been accused of a cover-up for refusing to publish a copy of the contract for really one of Britain's worst train operators. I'm definitely not from here, but even I know saying the name Avanti West Coast can get some people. Exactly. Yeah, and also we will be talking about the Diane Abbott, the comments made against her by the conservative billionaire, really horrific stuff, and her position as well within the Labour Party. So it's great to do that all today with my good friend Myron. Myron, welcome back to the show today. It's very good to have you.
Pleasure to meet you. I'm recording from what looks like someone's closet. I swear I'm not in number 10's closet. That wasn't why Obama came to 10 Downing Street. It wasn't to get me. It was to save Kate Middleton.
That could be interesting. You'd be trying to find out where Kate is. It's a very interesting question. But yeah, it really is. It does seem, we have to start with this, it does seem like to a big degree like the Prime Minister is in some sort of a tricky situation. Because, there has been some, various stories of meetings, because there always is some various kind of reporters of various levels in UK politics. You don't know how much to trust them. There's not some of the big names, but they're just like, there's been a big retreat. And, I think there was some stories like that recently in the Conservative Party about possibly, doing something against Rishi Sunak before the election, which I think would probably be crazy, but there still is some pretty wide-ranging speculation about whether he could be toppled, and it's not helping that the Telegraph, which as we know is pretty well connected within most parts of the Conservative Party, talks about how Penny Mordaunt has built up a 26,000-pound campaign war chest from donations since Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister. And, if you're an American, you're listening, to get the significance of that in British politics, you essentially have to times it by, like 5 to 10, honestly, because it's just like, I feel like, I think you probably have to times it by more than 10, because like that is the way people I saw were reacting about this. It seemed like it was a very, very big deal, and you're definitely going to surprise, because it is, I'm kind of somewhat familiar with the funds that flow in British politics being substantially less, so it wasn't the biggest, but it still was very interesting to see that level of money playing a big role, but also the fact that Rishi Sunak could still be politically vulnerable before the election. From his own party, not to mention the developing reform situation on the right. So, yeah.
I mean, I think that kind of, I think £26,000. I think what you have to remember is that, like, unlike in the States, we don't have like a primary system, so it isn't like a mini election. I mean, basically, the main thing you have to do is convince a bunch of your MPs who, you already know and have access to. You don't really need to pay to do that, and then also persuade the members, which is like not a lot of people. Like, there's only about, I think, 180,000 Conservative members, and you need basically 50% plus one of that in order to win. So, £26,000 might not seem a lot, especially when we're talking about in comparison to American politics. But the fact that there is a war chest and that it is substantial in the thousands, I think is important. But no, I think it's been a very wild week. We've had accusations of, an early general election just after the government tried to kind of squash any rumors of like a May one. There are reports that at the moment, in order to kind of trigger a leadership contest for listeners, only about 53 Conservative MPs need to basically send a letter of no confidence to what's called the 1922 committee, which basically holds kind of leadership contests. And there have been reports of, there being only 10 MPs, only 20 MPs, some highs even 40 MPs have sent a letter of no confidence. So, obviously all of this is happening behind the scenes, so we're not actually going to know what's truly going on unless, a leadership contest is or isn't called. But again, it's not a great front for Rishi Sunak, especially when he needs a united party going into the general election.
Yeah, I think the big question is, do you buy it? Is number one, obviously, and then the other question is it even really politically sensible? Because I feel like, yeah, you definitely do see some maneuvers going around in various parts of the more right wing parts of the Conservative Party. Because now even it's remarkable to see that Rishi Sunak has even been put in the center of the Conservative Party, even at this point, just the way things have been going, and so it is kind of interesting to see how that would play out. But it really does seem like another leader, another major switch up. I mean, honestly, unless it's someone absolutely crazy, like bring Boris Johnson back,
Barack
or something
Obama,
like that.
maybe.
Yeah, Barack Obama. No, but it could be. Yeah, I feel like that is the only really way that they can make any sort of big dent. And I think like just making this change. It's certainly politically possible. And obviously, I'm not very familiar with the, inner workings, the reportings of that, what's going on inside the MPs' heads. But it seems like it would be a very big political lift. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think you also have to realize that, like, I think there is a significant mood in the Conservative Party that is kind of like not about winning the next election, it's about damage control. And I think that there was a general kind of mysticism around kind of a prime minister's kind of constituency seat that kind of, usually the prime minister is in a very, very safe seat, mainly because it's like very, very embarrassing to have your, leader lose a seat in an election. But I think that, I mean, this is what kind of the good people on the news agents were saying, that kind of, Penny Mordaunt, her seat is very likely to be lost in the general election, especially with the current polling.
Yeah.
So, maybe it is the fact that either Penny herself or her supporters, because I do genuinely think that actually a lot of the people who are kind of being floated as potential leaders probably aren't really being that involved. I think it's more kind of the supporters of them, kind of maneuvering kind of underneath them that's kind of happening. But I think, if you have people like those who, this is kind of their last hurrah. If polling, continues in any shape or form towards the election in the way it is now. So, why not do a Hail Mary and try it out? But I do think that generally it would be a very bad idea for the Conservative Party because, again, it's just. I mean, this was the problem with the Labour Party for so long, is that kind of, it looked divided, and thus it didn't really seem. It didn't get public confidence to actually do anything, because if they can't even, agree among themselves who the leader should be, how are they going to, manage the budget or, defend the country from invasion, right? Or that kind of stuff. And so I think that, there's a slogan in British politics, united parties win elections, divided parties always lose them. And the Conservatives are a very, very divided party at the moment.
So you think this is kind of an effort to fight for the scraps of what will be most likely a losing Conservative Party, that Penny Mordaunt's faction is kind of getting in place to launch an effort for Rishi Sunak, and that it may not necessarily happen for the election, whatever that may be?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, Penny Mordaunt is absolutely going to run whenever or whatever leadership contest it's going to be in, because she is clearly,
if she's able to keep her seat, that's the thing.
If she's able to,
yeah.
Because she's clearly one of the most ambitious kind of politicians within the Conservative Party, and also kind of she's. I mean, I remember there were reports of people inside the Labour Party saying kind of the worst when the leadership elections were happening with Rishi and Truss, the worst person who'd win is Penny Mordaunt. I never really bought that. I think that Penny Mordaunt is a lot better than Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, but I think that is more because of Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss and Boris Johnson than Penny Mordaunt. I think she is fine rhetorical skills. I think that she is pretty moderate, which could, potentially get a lot of like the kind of blue wall kind of base back. But also she does also have kind of a Nikki Haley effect, in the sense of kind of she's very much kind of a flip-flopper. Like, I remember like she was one of the last kind of moderates when it came to trans rights, of kind of the kind of Theresa May era, compassionate conservatism. And she basically threw that under the bus in order to launch a leadership bid when Boris Johnson resigned. And so there is this kind of perception of her as kind of not really very principled. It's kind of standard moderate, but I don't think this is a Margaret Thatcher we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely seems like someone who is going to really, again, like, I think the Nikki Haley comparison, especially with the trans rights, because I think, well, Haley is probably pretty much guilty of doing it. Going from taking down the Confederate flag in the South Carolina State Building to saying that we're not a racist country, or America's never been racist on top of that, is a very kind of similar example there. And as someone who, yeah, will do anything for power, and definitely someone who, you know, I think she's probably a better politician, maybe, relative to other politicians around her than Nikki Haley was, dealing with someone like, a very, overly charismatic, cult-like figure like Donald Trump is pretty hard to compete with. And then, so yeah, but it's still a very, very interesting comparison, and does give you a sense to, someone who could be a very big player, in the fight for the Conservative Party, and met by, not a few strong women, Suella, Liz, maybe some others, maybe Jacob Rees-Mogg, that kind of faction on the other side. But it should be a very interesting battle. But again, that is still if she keeps her seat, and that's she will have a lot of money to do it. Yeah. So meanwhile, it is interesting to see with the back at Downing Street. We see all the players out there threatening for power, but back at Downing Street, Rishi Sunak got a visit from Barack Obama, who, yeah, obviously they served in the White House, and he had a previously undisclosed private meeting at Downing Street yesterday at 3 p.m. A Downing Street spokesperson said, according to The Independent, that it was an informal courtesy drop-in as part of the former president's visit to London. I don't know, like, I get the sense this is not entirely common, and because I don't think really Obama goes to London that much. But what did you make of this and the reaction around it?
It's really interesting because I mean you have like situations of kind of like big political names like visiting even like politicians of a different party, right? So famously like after Tony Blair was elected, Margaret Thatcher visited 10 Downing Street and had a conversation with him. But I think that usually, especially when it comes to foreign leaders, like especially generally the Democrats and Labour kind of coded as kind of allies and usually work together a lot more than kind of the Conservatives and the Democrats. I think what it could be is something about Cameron, because remember David Cameron was Prime Minister during Barack Obama's tenure as president. They had a pretty good relationship from what I can read. I think that yeah, I think that it may be that Obama was acting as kind of like an unofficial kind of envoy to Biden, from Biden to Cameron. It is also important to note that Obama recently has been a lot more involved in Biden's campaign. He's probably going to be one of those kind of surrogate speakers on the campaign trail in the States. So, but I don't think that would necessarily have much of an effect or make him go to 10 Downing Street. So it is definitely very puzzling, but I think it did definitely among the chattering classes kind of bring back a sense of kind of nostalgia of kind of the days when Britain didn't have to kind of worry about its biggest ally being ruled by whatever Donald Trump is this day of the week. So I think it's symbolically it was very interesting to kind of see that kind of relic of period of Western politics kind of come back onto the stage, I think.
Yeah, I think the connection there with David Cameron and potentially maybe something with regards to some sort of effort in relation to Israel is a very interesting one. But I feel like we will probably never know. And it very well, obviously Occam's razor could be, just a chat of them talking about, what it's like being in the big, powerful seat in their country. It could just like leaders catching up. You never know. So it's definitely in kind of an interesting moment to, see Obama pop up anywhere outside of Netflix or Martha's Vineyard in his post-presidency. So with that yeah.
But though I do think that this is very important, I think, and I think that this is completely understated. I think that it is important to note that hours after Obama left 10 Downing Street, we got the first pictures in 5 months of Kate Middleton. I think that this was an extraction
Wow.
mission. I think that Michelle was worried. And if I was scrolling on Twitter and my husband could just waltz into 10 Downing Street and ask what's going on, I mean, who among us wouldn't?
She's like, I'm
But
I'm worried about my girl Kate. Like we gotta see what's
exactly,
going on over there. And Obama comes
girl
in.
bosses got to stick together.
Rishi makes a call, but yeah, it'll be. I don't know. Yeah, and that's of course that's if you think that's even Kate Middleton at all. So
Exactly.
it could
Crisis
be
actor.
some other actress. Could be Rose Hansberry in disguise. Reading up on
Yeah.
all that. Yeah, very interesting. Like the whole network of nobles and people associated, and also the politicians that because we could get in a whole other conversation, but the politicians that get made lords, and then the lord names that come up with that, and then it's kind of gets sometimes like shared jokingly in
Mm.
American political parts of social media about people like when Eric Pickles got a lordship and Andrew Adonis and people like that. So
Mm.
yeah, very very funny stuff. But
Yeah, I saw some
yeah,
Lord Obama of Earl of like Chicago or something like that.
yeah,
Um,
Baron Obama, that would be Baron. I've heard British people say it's like Baron Barack Obama, like that's how they say it.
yeah.
Like they kind of change the vowel soundings there a little bit. But yeah, very very interesting stuff though with Barack Obama. But something that he would probably not approve of is government corruption. And to to make a
So
segue
true.
there. But yeah, the RMT has apparently is come out and accused the government of a cover up for refusing to publish a copy of the contract for one of Britain's worst train operators. This is reported by the outlet that I'm sure Myron pays a monthly subscription to, Navarra Media.
Oh,
The RMT, yeah.
every
So
morning, every morning.
yeah, well, every night if you're watching their nightly
Yeah.
show. But yeah, so yeah, the government, of course, it is Avanti West Coast. The government awarded a 9-year contract for the West Coast service linking London, Birmingham, Manchester, and Glasgow last September, despite the firm's dreadful track record. And that's one thing I feel like is to make that. To do that contract in the first place, you could say, oh, well, we have this record of working in the past. You could probably find something to spin to, but then to go as far as to not even release the details of the contract, just for pure government transparency, I feel like is kind of a new level of just lack of just openness, lack of just normality on that front. What do you make of this, and what do you make of just the whole train system in general, and the conservatives' handling of it, maybe even versus Labour's handling of it?
Well, I mean, I am British and I'm autistic and I live in London, which means that I am legally required to be obsessed with the British railway system. It's the only way I can get the diagnosis. But no, I think that I mean, the handling of British trains has actually been. I mean, it's been quite a journey, especially recently. It used to be that, the entire British system was kind of nationalized after the war. Then in the 1990s, not Margaret Thatcher, but John Major actually, privatized the railways. But he did it in a way that was very, very kind of state-centric still. And so, basically you'd have a bidding process between different companies, and the government would basically pick whoever had the best choice to basically run like a section of track. And the problem with that was that what basically it happened is that it created a natural monopoly in which there's not going to be 5 different lines going to the exact same place ran by like 5 different operators. And so because it's basically picked by the government, the one company that has a monopoly on, say, London to Liverpool doesn't actually really have that much of an incentive in the market to improve their service because, again, there's no real competitors. And so this system kind of limped along for a while until kind of COVID, in which basically this entire system fell apart because no one was making any money. And so basically, the system now is very actually similar to TfL, where it's technically government owned, but the government kind of contracts it out to different kind of providers and services. And I think that kind of change is why we're seeing this kind of, very opaque kind of kind of system of giving out contracts and stuff. Because I mean, it's even more less transparent than it was in the 90s when it was privatized. And so much of it now is basically not anything to do with the actual performance of, say, Avanti or Northern or West Coast, but more just kind of, which part one the government prefers for, probably political reasons.
Yeah, so you're saying it's almost kind of a worst of both worlds situation where you do have that government control, and that government control is specifically used to, crowd out any impulses of the market that they may have, good or bad.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, again, there was never going to be any real impulses of the market because inherently you can only kind of have so many train lines going to one place.
Mm.
And so, I think that you can have a system in which kind of, the rail system has elements of private competition and works. I mean, for example, in most European countries, you have a state-run kind of, nationalized kind of railway company. But those lines can also be used by private companies if those lines are profitable enough for them to choose to put it on there. It's not like it's forced to be a private company like in the UK. So I think that kind of, yeah. So I think that this system, the way it's designed, especially after COVID, has just been very opaque, as this case shows, and it's just led to absolutely horrible services. I mean, I remember this winter, some of my friends who live in Scotland basically couldn't get up there because the trains were getting delayed basically day after day after day, and had to pay something of like 200-300 pounds because these companies have no incentive to actually give refunds for these things, and so. Yeah, no, it is really bad. And I have to say this, that's why it's great that Labour has, throughout Keir Starmer's leadership, promised to renationalise the railways fully. None of this kind of nonsense kind of giving it out to contractors or whatever, but fully actually privatise and own all the contracts, which I think if money is put into that, could actually mean that we actually do get a world-class rail service that, the founding country of railways, in my opinion, deserve, I think.
Yeah, I really do hope for that, and I hope that two words that aren't often associated with, or two concepts that aren't associated with Keir Starmer, which are nationalization and keeping his promises, I hope those two things follow through for the sake of this country, and that they could have even better rail services, which, even, coming from America's perspective, I would say they're already, really cool rails, and just the geography, the closeness of the fact that you can be in, London and Birmingham in like 2 hours, and it's just like that in and of itself is very cool. But I hope that that nationalization can happen, and that he takes a good idea from the real traditions of his party and makes it come through for the sake of the wonderful British train service. All right, so we are going to go now to our final story. An interesting comments by Angela Rayner saying, I would like Diane Abbott to be a Labour MP again. She said she wants to see Diane Abbott back in the party, according to The Guardian. And she does not know why the party leadership has not apologized to the MP over the racist abuse she faced internally. And this is where I think you see a really interesting kind of leftward, I guess, swing, for Angela Rayner. You see her kind of going on to, both sides. I think she's definitely someone who would fit the kind of soft left designation, but someone who is really, I would say, kind of making a significant break with the leadership and the position that they've seen towards Diane Abbott and towards people, associated with that wing of the party. The party's deputy leader said she sometimes shared frustrations with how long Labour investigations took, while noting they had to follow procedures. Abbott, who was elected as the MP for Hackney North and Stoke Newington in 1987, was sat as an independent MP since April. And the Labour whip was withdrawn after a letter to the Observer suggesting Jewish, Irish, and all traveller people were not subject to racism all their lives, essentially making the point, I would say, in a pretty clunky way, that racism, really hits different when it's the color of your skin because you can't hide that. Irish people can pretend not to be Irish or can hide being Irish because they're white, they're still, show up, as in the white side of things on that kind of, racial spectrum, I guess. But, kind of making that point, I would say in a clunky way. She apologized swiftly, but faced disciplinary action from the party. Keir Starmer said the party must support Abbott after The Guardian revealed comments made by Frank Hester, the Conservatives' biggest donor. Really just shocking comments saying that Diane Abbott, he wants this guy saying he wants to shoot Diane Abbott. Someone's given $10 million over the years to the Tory party, wants to shoot Diane Abbott, and thinks that Diane Abbott makes him hate all black women. So yeah, what is your reaction to, just first, I guess we could start with the Frank Hester situation and then go into Rayner's comments there, because I think they're both very, interesting windows into British politics.
I mean, I think actually this is the worst thing. One of the worst things about racism is that it like in the sense of it is cruel and horrible to people unnecessarily in a way that actually can obscure that person's, how do I put this? In the sense that it I guess my main thing is that out of all the things that you could critique Diane Abbott for, and trust me, there are many things that you could critique Diane Abbott for, her being black and a black woman and saying those kind of comments, that Diane Abbott makes me want to hate all black women, is just, it's at the bottom of it isn't even on the list. I mean, it's just a horrifically racist and violent thing to say. And even if you do oppose Diane Abbott's kind of views and beliefs, it completely obscures that by just being vile and disgusting. And I think that, listen, I disagree with Diane Abbott, I disagree with Zara Sultana, I disagree with many MPs in Parliament, but I don't think that them having an opinion that I view as wrong is ever an excuse to justify violence or say that they are representative of an entire group. I mean, honestly, I think it is just, and I think that the worst thing about this was that, once again, the Tory MPs and Tory ministers went on TV and couldn't say that it was racist, couldn't mouth the words racist.
Yeah, MP safety crisis is not front of mind for them at the moment, I would say.
Definitely not. And so I think that I mean I think these comments are just racist and horrible. I think that though it does. I mean, I haven't actually read that particular kind of what Angela Rayner said, so I'm not gonna necessarily comment on it like I know what she's fully said. But what I will say is that I think that you can be nuanced here. I think you can say that what has been said about Diane Abbott, the massive amounts of abuse that she's gotten, is wrong and isn't tolerable, and those who say so should be punished, and should not be able to show their faces in public life again. And also say that Diane Abbott...
People like Ian McNichol, or people like Emily Oldknow.
I mean, my main point is, though, that you can also say that Diane Abbott herself also has said many, in my opinion, bigoted things. I think you put a very charitable interpretation of the article. I mean, which basically was denying that there was, legitimate or equally legitimate racism against, Irish people, Roma people, and Jewish people, which I think for someone who is the MP of Hackney, which has a large Jewish population, is simply not something that, an MP in that kind of constituency should be saying. And, I think whether or not she should be let back into the party, I mean, I think the best way to illustrate this is that, after Diane Abbott was kicked out, the Labour Party said, we will let you back in if you take training on anti-Semitism, right? If you take training on anti-Semitism, we will let you back into the party. We will remove the whip. And she denied it. And it's the same thing with this kind of, Corbyn wing of the party. I mean, there's the same thing often to Corbyn, which is that Corbyn could have became an MP again if he'd just apologised, if he had just said that he was sorry. But, people on the left, or these certain people on the far left of the Labour Party, you know, simply are too full of themselves to take responsibility for the wrong things they've done and try to make amends. And that's why Diane Abbott isn't a member of the a member of the Parliamentary Labour Party. And I think that I think that it should stay that way personally. Um,
Well, the headline to be fair, the headline in the Jewish Chronicle is, and yeah, Jewish Chronicle of all places, probably not the biggest fans of Diane Abbott. They say that she has denied that she rejected anti-Semitism training offered by the Labour Party. So, I think it's interesting. I'm not saying that either one specifically is lying, but I'd say it's not exactly a settled issue on the whole thing with the training and all that. But I do want to also read a little bit more of what Rayner had to say. She said, "Personally, I'd like to see Abbott back, but the Labour Party has to follow its procedures. For me, the most important thing is that we have made sure that our party is fit to govern by making sure that we have robust complaint procedures that people can have confidence in." She said that Starmer and her do not interfere with the complaints process, although she did share the frustration at times of how long these processes can take, but in some instances there are sensitive reasons for that. Rayner told The Guardian she did not believe that the Labour Party doesn't have any racists in it because it's a massive organization. Again, I think that's something that, has been said by, certain people, but the party had done a lot of work since the Ford report to root people out. And I think I wouldn't say it's necessarily the Ford report because the Ford report was kind of really did say that the party had used racist tropes to describe Abbott, and it had made expressions of visceral disgust when referring to the longest-serving black MP, and also called out, if I remember correctly, the Islamophobia in the Labour Party. And I think you do obviously need to tackle anti-Semitism, but you also, I would say, just as equally need to tackle Islamophobia. So it's a very, very, very tense issue for sure within inside the Labour Party. Abbott has said on a number of occasions she has not received an apology for the attitudes expressed towards her and other black MPs in private WhatsApp exchanges shared by Labour staff hostile to Jeremy Corbyn, which was, honestly, this was probably this WhatsApp exchange and just the shocking nature of it to me was what really got me into British politics. So I think it is a very, it's very, very clear. And you could definitely have some, disagreements with Diane Abbott on the policy, but I feel like that is definitely something that
not just on the policy
is a massive hole in in her relationship with the Labour Party on the side of the Labour Party.
Well, not just on the policy, on also what she has said about minorities and the fact that she was in a pretty high position when the Labour leadership under Jeremy Corbyn was, dismissing and basically, in some ways enabling, anti-Semitism. And I think that I don't think that's just simply like a policy disagreement. I mean, I think that those those WhatsApp messages are, if you read them, absolutely horrible. And I think it's a testament to how just nasty politics can be. But again, I think, as you said, I think that Labour has done a lot of work of rooting out, first anti-Semitism, because, that was the biggest issue when Keir Starmer, came into power in the Labour Party. And, I think that, I hope that work continues when it comes to Islamophobia, as I hope it continues when it comes to all political parties. I don't think anywhere in our political discourse should there be kind of space for Islamophobia or kind of any sort of racism at all. And listen, we do have a lot. Labour Party still does have a lot of work to do. I mean, I wasn't particularly happy by the fact that after our parliamentary selections, there wasn't a single kind of black man elected to be a PPC in any of our kind of parliamentary selections. We need to work on that. But I think that again, I still think though that the racist abuse towards Diane Abbott, as horrible as it is, does not give her reason to come back into the party. I think that she fundamentally does not agree with core Labour principles and core Labour values of anti-racism, of anti-authoritarianism as well. We were a democratic socialist party before we were a socialist party. And again, I hope that the vile hatred against her stops, but I don't think that she has a place in the Labour Party, and I hope that I hope that she doesn't come back into the Labour Party, frankly.
Yeah, honestly, to a certain extent, especially with the way the Labor Party is now and how the people that said those things about her and are so I think it's obvious for everyone, very very different on the way that they view the world, and we could get into an hours long debate about those different things and all the comments that Diane Abbott has said and all the things that have been said to her. But I would we can end, I feel like, on a note of agreement that Diane Abbott, I feel like, would be better off and probably would be, a more happier person were she to stand as an independent in Parliament and hopefully retake the seat in Hackney in 2024. I'm sure you wouldn't agree on the last part, but
I would wish good luck to whatever Labour candidate is standing in Hackney. And hey, I'm pretty close to Hackney, actually. I know some people who live there, so I will probably go campaigning for that Labour candidate because I think that the people of Hackney deserve much better than Diane Abbott. But again, Diane Abbott should not be treated racially, should not be racially abused in any way. And I think that the entire political British establishment owes not just Diane Abbott, but MPs, women MPs of colour, an apology, and to be honest, kind of needs to work on being so much better than we currently are when it comes to this issue.
Yeah, that part of North London is definitely going to be a very, very interesting part of a lot of interesting campaigning going on throughout this year. That is for sure. All right, that is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much, Brian, for joining us, and we will try and be back again next Tuesday.
See you around.
All right.